Hello everyone, Professor Toybox here, and I'd like to welcome you back to my Prop Wash Junction Toy Box. Today I'm here with Dash because I'm feeling the need for speed. Last time we looked at building path-based air races and noted there are two big issues. First, large paths tend to bog down the CPU, and second, the challenge ring gates are hard to hit with a fast-moving jet, and because of that, path-based air races are best kept small and flown with a helicopter like the ones you see over here. But I really want to race these jets. And so today we're going to build an air race using our own custom gates. This takes a little bit more work to create, but it's still not too difficult, as you'll see. Now to save time, I've gone ahead and figured out where I want to place my gates. And we'll come in here to Spark mode and just show you. These are just placeholders to basically mark where the gates are going to go. And I'm going to delete these blocks when I'm done, but they're just positioning. I've already flown a jet along this route, so I kind of know that I can take some of these turns and make these corners pretty, not necessarily easily, but I know I can turn the jet with full afterburners on and be able to hit these gates if I'm really good. I can also turn the afterburners off just before I make the turn, and then I can make it a little bit more accurately. You can make your race gates as narrow or as wide as you can. I chose to make mine 6 blocks wide up here, and down there where I'm making turns along the course and doing some more detailed maneuvers, I've made them 3 or 4 blocks wide. But it's your gate, your gates in your toy box, and you can make them as wide or as narrow as you want. So that's where the gates are going to go. To go ahead and place these, I'm going to use the Tomorrowland pieces. And I kind of like this one right here. If you don't happen to own those power discs and don't have those buildings available in your toy box, anything that's fairly small and tall will work. You basically want something that just kind of marks the end of the gates and adds a little bit of height to it. And before I place these, though, I'm going to go ahead and put them down using a replayer. And we'll go ahead and stick that right over here. And the reason I want to do that is because I don't want these gates there all the time. I want to only put them down when I want to race. And then there's going to be other things I'd like to do in my toy box. So I don't want those big, ugly, sightly gates getting in the way. And so we'll go ahead and put down a replayer over here. And let's see, there it is. So we'll do that. Oops, undo. Let's put it on the ground first. There we go. Back up just a tad. Okay. And we'll go ahead and step on the replayer, and we'll start putting the gates down. And they're over in building drawer number 2. So I'm going to put mine down about like so. That'll give a little bit more of the height to be able to maneuver through this gate with the jet. And put one down on each side of these guys. Again, you can use anything that you like if you don't care for the look of these. There's a lot of different tall buildings and thin buildings, thin buildings in your toy box drawers that you can use. I prefer these gates here. The white makes them stand out pretty well against the terrain and the skybox, so I can see them as I'm moving along fast. I don't want to be able to miss them. I want something that's going to stand out and be fairly obvious. And the futuristic look of these against the rather rustic farmland terrain is pretty stark, so it's kind of hard to miss them. I was inspired to do this by watching the Planes movie, and when Dusty goes off to the air qualifiers, and near the start of the movie, they have some different cones and things that the planes are flying in and around. And I got to thinking we could build our own gates that look similar to that and work similar. And we can make them as large as we want or as small as we want, and be a lot easier to fly a plane through those. And that'll give me the air race that I'm looking for with the jets. You can also set this thing up so that we can fly the jets or a helicopter or just a flying character like Iron Man or Tinkerbell and fly the course with them. So it doesn't have to be just jets. You can fly just about anything on this course. Oops, gotta come over a little bit further. There we go. And last one. Okay, and now we'll step back on here and we'll go ahead and stop recording. So now if we clear those gates, they're gone. And if we play, they're back. So now I can take those blocks out, and I'll do that for just the first one here so we can kind of see what that looks like. I'll show you how to set up one or two of the gates plus the last gate, because that's a little bit special. And then I'll probably go offline and finish the course and come back and show you the final completed course. So there's our racing gate. So that's pretty good. Looks nice and wide. And when I'm flying the plane through there, there's some margin for error. So that's really good. I like that. Okay, so next we're ready to start building the actual challenge. And let me open up my notes here to make sure I get exactly the pieces that I need. So we'll come up here to the Creative Toys. And actually Gameplay Toys is good too, because I want a sound generator. So we'll grab that first. And we'll put that right over here. And before I forget, let's go ahead and set the properties for this so that we turn off the sound at the speaker. This way anything this thing makes, any sound this thing makes, we'll hear anywhere in the toy box. And what I want to use this for is to make a sound when we fly through the gates. That'll give us some audio confirmation that we actually hit that gate. Because if you're flying along fast and you happen to hit the edge of the gate and you're not sure if you made it, that's not a good thing. So we want to make sure that we did. And that will help us do that. Alright, so now we'll come up to the Creative Toys. And we already got the replayer. We're going to need a counter. If you're going to make just a single loop race, one lap, you don't need a counter. But I'm going to do 3 laps for my race, so I'm going to use the counter. And that'll show you how to do that. When we get to the point where we would plug into the counter, I'll point out where what you would do different for a single lap race. We're going to need the timer. We're going to need the challenge maker, which is right here. And we're going to need the trigger gates. We'll come back to those in a minute. We're going to need some starting positions. And we'll put these back here towards the end of this thing. This gate back here is going to be the finish line. That gate there will be the first one that we fly through. And I want to make sure we leave enough room for 2 players here. I'm going to make this a single player race, I think, just to keep things simple. And each player can go ahead and take turns. But when you have 2 players in the toy box, both of them have to accept the invites and start. So the second player, the one who's not racing, will just peel off and watch the other guy race. He'll finish the course and then go ahead, and the second guy can go ahead and run the race, and then you can compare notes. I think that's kind of the easiest way to run this. If you try to fly 2 jets through these gates, there could be a lot of collisions, and yeah, that might be kind of fun to do, but the logic for that will get a little bit more complicated, so I want to keep this simple. Okay, so we got our locators, our timer, our counter, our challenge maker, the sound generator. All we need now are the trigger areas. And again, I'm going to show you how to set up just 1 or 2 of these to start with. So for our gates, we're going to go ahead and line that up with the edge of this here. And then we'll come up here and move this over to fill the gate. So about like so, and to the height of the gate. And there we have a gate that we can fly through. You won't see the yellow area when you're playing, but you will see it while we're building this thing. I'll set up another one down here, just so I can show you how these gates will work, and then I'll set up the last one, because the final gate does a little bit different things than the rest of the gates. So get this lined up with the gates here. Again, I'll delete those blocks at the end before I actually erase this thing. Okay, so there's second gate, and then I'll hook up the last gate down here so that we can show you what's different about this one, because this one has to increment the timer and finish the race when we come through it on the last lap. So let's go ahead and put that down over there. I try to line up one of the corners so that I don't have to adjust both corners. Just a little tip that you learn early on when you start building with these. If you have to move both of these, it just takes longer. Okay, so there's 3 of our gates. Now for the first gate, what we want to do, well, let's see. Let's start at the beginning. So on the challenge maker here, when we first get ready to start the race, we want to come in here, and on invites accepted, we're going to enable the first gate. So we'll go ahead and activate that one. And for the rest of them, on invites accepted, we're going to go deactivate all the other gates, because only the first gate do we want to actually be active. Oops. Let me do that again. If you make a mistake, you can just come back into that gate and do it from this end. You don't have to delete the link and run all the way back. Okay, so that one's disabled. And we'll go ahead and invites accepted. We'll disable the one back here. You really want to force the player to hit these gates one at a time. And if you don't deactivate the gates, there's nothing to prevent the player from just looping through here and just setting the counter and setting the counter and setting the counter and winning with a really ridiculously short time. I want him to actually run the course. So that's why we're going to deactivate those gates. So that's the setup. And then when the game actually starts, we want to kick off the timer. And likewise, oops, when the game ends, we'll go ahead and reset the timer. And when the game is completed, we'll stop the timer. And we'll also do that if the game is failed or aborted for any reason. Okay, so there's the timer, and while we're here, let's go ahead and set up the timer. So the target time, we're going to go ahead and, like we've done before, we're going to set this to the maximum 9999, and we're not going to count down, we're going to count up. We want to know how long it takes to run the course. And then at the end of the game, new time results, we want to actually connect to the timer to show the results. There we go. Okay, and the other thing I want to do on invites accepted is to play the replayer and put the gates up. So we'll do playback. And when the game is over, we can clear the gates. Get those out of the way. So there's our setup. Okay, so we've activated the first gate when we start. What we want to do now with the gates is we're going to put down a logic gate next to each of these, because we're going to want the gate to deactivate itself when you fly through it. A little bit further, let me think here, it is. Okay, so we'll put one down next to each of the gates. And you'll do this for all of the gates. Again, I'm just showing the first couple. All the other gates are going to go the same way these do. There's really no difference except for the end gate, which I'm going to show you what's different about that one when we get to it. La 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 la. Be nice if this moved a little bit quicker. There we go. Actually can go into spark mode and move a little quicker. Okay, so when the player flies through the gate, each gate, we want to do three things. So the first thing we want to do is when they enter the gate by player Annie, I want to go ahead and activate the next gate and turn that on. So that's the first thing. The second thing we want to do when the player flies through a gate, entered by player Annie, because I don't know if it's player 1 or player 2 running the race. So we're going to come over here and play a little sound so that we know that we actually crossed the gate. And I'm going to use the ding sound. That's just kind of a pretty good sound that seems to carry well above the jet noise and the music that plays when the jets fly. The third thing we want to do with each gate is when the player enters the gate, we want to deactivate itself. And since I can't connect directly to the gate or to the trigger area myself, we'll connect over here to this logic gate. So we'll open the logic gate, and when the logic gate is open, come back over here and deactivate this trigger area. And we do the same thing for each of the gates. So this one down here would go ahead and activate the next gate down, which I'm not going to set up. It would go over to this logic gate to deactivate itself, and it would also come back here to the sound effect machine and do the ding. And I won't bore you by hooking this up for every gate, but every gate's going to do those exact same three things, except for the very last gate. So the very last gate is a little bit different. Since we're doing a multi-lap race, some of the things are the same. So when we get to this gate, when the player enters this one, player Annie, we want to go ahead and activate that next gate for the next lap here. So that's the same. We also want to go ahead and play that ding sound. So that's also the same. So new logic connection when entered by player Annie. Come over here and play the ding. Under general, scroll down to the ding. Because this works the same as every other gate, so it should sound the same as every other gate. And the other piece that's the same is to go ahead and deactivate itself until you come back around. So player Annie, and we'll connect over to this little logic gate and open. And when it's open, come back over here and deactivate itself. Okay, but now this is the last gate, so it has to do one other thing, two other things. So when you fly through this gate, we need to increment the counter. So when the player enters this gate, this completes a lap. So we're going to come over to the counter and increment the counter by 1. And while we're here, let's go ahead and set up the properties for this counter. I want to do 3 laps, so our target count is going to be 3. This does not need to be on, and it can reset on the target reach, that's fine. So every time you pass through this gate, it's going to increment this counter. And when the counter reaches its target of 3, so 3 laps have been completed, we'll come back over to the challenge maker and we will complete the game. And that will finish the game. So basically that's our race course. We're going to go through and each gate activates the next gate as you pass through it. And you go on around the course, come back to this gate, it increments the counter for the number of laps. And when it hits 3, we end the game. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and hook up all of the other gates and delete those blocks that aren't needed anymore. And this will take me a few minutes to do. For you, you're going to see it all completed in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bingo. Okay, welcome back. I've went ahead and hooked up all of the gates, the remaining gates, so that when invites are accepted, it deactivates all the gates. When the game is ended, it deactivates all the gates, and each of the gates activates the next gate when you fly through it. I also removed all the helper blocks and cleared my replayer, so all of the gates are gone. And I think we're just about ready to run. I also moved all my Creativitoys below the terrain, as you can see, to kind of reduce the clutter. So we're ready to go ahead. Oh, and I also set the challenge properties. And I probably should show you that before we go ahead and do the race here, just so you can see what I did. I forgot to do that earlier. So I went ahead and set the results score label to time, since this is a time-based race. I also went down here and left this as all vehicles and mounts, so that I can fly this as a jet or as a helicopter, or I can fly it as Iron Man without any kind of vehicle. So that gives you a little bit more freedom. What that means, though, is that I will have to hop in the jet before I go ahead and run the race. So I've already parked one over here. And let me go ahead and land. Whoa, hello. Land on the challenge maker so I can go ahead and start the challenge. And here we go. This ought to be good. And away we go. So each of the gates activates the next one and makes a sound, and I'm already off course. Up and over the trees and down into the next gate. Next gate. And raise up over the trees through the next one. Come around this tight turn. One lap done. So this looks pretty good. I'm a little hesitant to try to fly those corners at full speed, but I might do that on the next lap, just for fun. So this is pretty nice, because you can fly this thing at full throttle through these... Whoa, I missed a gate, so now we have to come back around, because the other one will not register if I try to fly through that. There we go. Because you have to fly through each gate to activate the next one. And final lap. Let's cruise this one at full speed and just kind of see what happens here. Whoa! This is fun. This is kind of the race that I was envisioning being able to do here with the jet. Full throttle, man. Hey, and I made that gate. Cool. And here we go.
Best day ever!
Okay, and the end of the race took me a little less than 2 minutes. I could probably do better if I practiced, but there we go. And now it removed at the end of the challenge all those gates, so they're out of the way. It also deactivated them, so I can't run through these and ding, ding, ding activate them when I'm trying to play other games in the toy box. So I hope you've enjoyed this little tutorial on how to make an air racing game. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos, and I'm probably going to do a couple of more things in this series before we move on to a new toy box build. And also visit my blog for build tips and maps and different build instructions, logic diagrams, and things for the toy boxes I've built so that you can build all these things yourself in your toy box. But that's all for today from Prop Wash Junction, and I'll see you next time. Bye.